Real GM, Celtics blog, at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. Keith Smith joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. You were in there last night. First off, it seemed like a great atmosphere in Boston. One that might have played a role. You know, the Sixers had said, hey, we were down in Miami, half-empty building. Didn't get that last night.
No, it definitely wasn't. I think the Celtics fans at this point, they're just having fun with this team. They know that they're the underdogs, and Boston loves an underdog, so they've gotten behind these guys quite a bit.
Yeah, and, to me, I don't know. We talk about the Sixers had the 6 days off. The Celtics just played. I don't know if it's the rest or the rust or whatever you want to call it, but I think these NBA guys are a creature of habit. You don't get 6 days off during an NBA season. So the Sixers looked like a team that hadn't played in 6 days, whether you want to say whether they were rusty or that was a factor. Boston seemed to be more in rhythm than Philadelphia did.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And the 6 days off thing is a great point. Whenever you see these teams come out of, like, say, the All-Star break, those first couple of games are a little ragged. Takes guys a little while to get back into that rhythm of what they're used to doing. Sometimes the playoffs can even throw that off, too, because there's a lot of times in there with 2 and sometimes even 3 days break. So I think there's definitely something to that. I was a little surprised some of the strategic moves that the Sixers made, especially on the defensive end. That I think threw them off more than anything, but offensively it was definitely, I think, more of a rust thing than it was anything else.
Overall, I think if I could pick your voice out last night, I think I heard you in the Sixers locker room, or at least talking to Embiid. Did you get a sense? Did they seem like what the heck just happened, or was it, hey, we lost a game on the road, that happens in the playoffs?
Yeah, more the second. My impression is that they were like, hey, we lost to a good team on the road, and we're just going to get back at it next game, which is really where you want their attitude to be, especially with so many young guys at the forefront of this roster. The fact that they just seem able to shrug these things off and move forward, that's a great time for them in their growth and really their continuance of this playoff run.
Keith Smith with us, and Keith at Celtics blog on Twitter. You hit on a lot of those cross matches going into it. A lot of those things came to pass last night, and I specifically want to start with Brad Stevens versus Brett Brown, because a lot of people down here, as soon as the game was done, said, oh, Brad Stevens outcoached Brett Brown. Do you agree with that?
I think he did a little bit, as far as Stevens made some adjustments throughout the game, really from the beginning and then throughout the game. Right off the bat, they decided we're going to single cover Joel Embiid. They only sent one double at him all game long, and from everything I've been able to find statistically, that's the least he's seen in a game this season, only one time. So they let Aaron Baines primarily play him straight up, and then Al Horford on occasion. And then Stevens will bleed a matchup or a set dry until the other team stops it. And they went to Jason Tatum against J.J. Redick and Marco Bellinelli time and time again, and Philadelphia never really adjusted to it.
And then you also tweeted out earlier today that he played an 8-man rotation. Only Jason Tatum played more than 35 minutes. I mean, I guess you got to give a little tip of the cap there, is the pieces are working, the rotations are working just fine.
Yeah, the Celtics, one of the things that has helped their next man up philosophy this year is they continue to lose guys to just the absurd amount of injuries they've gone through, is Stevens puts everybody in a role and only asks the player to play that role. Doesn't ask them to do anything more, doesn't ask them to do anything they're not capable of. It's all about putting guys in a spot to play to their strengths and do what they're able to do. So that allows him to really only play these 8 guys, and half of which are rookies or young players, and that allowed them to stay right in there and do what they had to do to get the win last night.
Saw a lot of tweets about Rozier, too. In fact, a few of them, too, that said he was going to be a bust coming out. What was this guy going to bring to the team? I mean, is he exploded onto the scene, and can we expect Terry Rozier to continue to shoot the lights out like he did last night?
Yeah, I don't know that he's going to go 7 of 9 from the three-point line. Again, that was impressive even for how good he's been as of late. But the interesting thing is he has always been a pretty good scorer. Even when he early in the league, his problem was the Celtics were trying to figure out for his first few years, is he a point guard or is he a scoring guard? And now I think they've settled into, you know what, let's just let him play and let him do his thing. If he's going to score, that's fine. He improved as a playmaker. You really see it when he gets to play with Marcus Smart, that is ideally the Celtics the reserve backcourt. He plays off the ball quite a bit. He functions as more of a secondary playmaker where Smart handles the primary duties. And that frees Rozier up to do a lot of things he does. And he's really taken advantage and doing those things well so far throughout this playoffs.
Keith Smith, Real GM, Celtics blog, and he joined us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. The Sixers, they didn't shoot the ball very well last night, obviously. And once this game reminded me a lot of the Sixers Heat game 2, where the Sixers just didn't shoot the ball very well, kind of got away from what they were doing. And then, they lost game 2, came back and won game 3. But it seemed like last night they weren't shooting well and got away from it and just started feeding Embiid. And Boston said, we'll go 3 for 2. Did you sense that Boston was okay with Embiid getting his touches and just scoring? Was that kind of what they were, that they were kind of hoping for? Like, hey, we'll give Embiid his shots. If they're 2s, we're fine with that.
Yeah, that was the game plan right from the jump. It was let him get his inside and stick to those shooters on the outside. They were able to do that. Philly was only 5 of 26 from behind the arc, and Boston stuck to them. They missed a few open ones, but not very many of them were all that open. And Brad Stevens even said once they got up by 12, 14 points, at that point when you had about 7, 8 minutes left in the game, he was content to make them work to get it into Embiid as long as they wanted to keep doing that, because it was taking 20 seconds or so off the clock every time. And at that point, it was as much time as it was score for the Celtics. So they were content to let him have what he wanted as and hold them off in the comeback.
J.J. Redick was getting exploited. That's one of the things Stevens does well. He finds something, he keeps going after it. And if Redick's on the floor for extended minutes in this series, do you think that's going to be a problem for Philly?
Yeah, they're going to have to figure out something different. I really thought what we would see is Ben Simmons, especially with Marcus Smart starting. I thought Simmons would, and I'm doing air quotes here, cover him. I thought he would be kind of a roamer, play that free safety role. And then I thought Redick might get Rozier, where he's more comfortable out on the perimeter. He's chased around guys, his entire career out on the perimeter, even though Rozier's not a good matchup. And then that would put Covington on Tatum. And that's what I expected to see when they came out differently and they had Simmons on Rozier, Covington kind of covering Smart a little bit, and then Redick isolated on Tatum. The Celtics went to it right away. It never stopped all game long, because that's, you said it, that's what Stevens going to do. He's just going to keep going to it until you adjust, and then he'll make his adjustment. And that adjustment never came from Philly, so they never stopped going to Tatum time and time again.
Hey, Keith, what about Jalen Brown's status for game 2? Any update there?
Yeah, he said today that he expects to play in Game 2 on Thursday. I think having the couple of extra days in between the games is going to help him. Whether he's able to go and be full bore, we'll see. I'm going to guess there's going to be a very short leash on him if he's not able to play at the level that he's used to, which his game is very much based on athleticism and getting up and down the court and making plays using his quickness and explosiveness. If he's not able to do that, I think the Celtics will pull the plug very quickly, because they're not going to risk anything long-term with Jalen Brown for any kind of very short-term gain. But he says he's going to play, and that would be a huge lift for the Celtics.
In your mind, is the Celtics roster underrated? There were 6 players on the court in Boston uniforms last night that were all first-round draft picks.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit. I think it's because what people look at is they want to focus on the things that the Celtics guys can't do. Marcus Smart can't shoot. Well, that's true, but that overlooks that he's a much improved playmaker and that he's one of the best defensive players in the league, and that he's also not afraid to stick his nose in there against just about anybody. And then you've got guys like Semi Ojeleye, Shane Larkin. These guys were really afterthoughts coming into the season. Larkin had to fight his way onto the roster, and those guys both gave Boston really quality minutes off the bench. So I think at times teams look at it and say, it's all these guys who are gone, but they don't look at the guys who are left and what they can do. And again, it's all about Stevens putting them in the position to succeed and play to their strengths.
Yeah, it looks like this is a team that just knows how to play well together. They have good synergy. There's not, without Kyrie, there's really not the standout guy, but they have some synergy together as a cohesive unit.
Yeah, they definitely do, especially on the defensive end. I've never seen a team, especially they only returned 4 players from last year's roster. So when they came into the season and they were the top defense right from the very first game. And the way that those guys got together defensively is just incredible. They execute a lot of things at a very high level with all new players and very young players doing some of those things. It's just a joy to watch on that end of the floor. And then offensively, they're at their best when the ball moves and the players move. Whenever it sticks, they become very, very easy to guard, especially without Kyrie Irving, because they don't have a lot of offensive creators who can just say, get me the ball with 5 seconds left on the shot clock, and I'm going to make something happen here. They have to do it as a team, and right now Brad Stevens, more often than not, he's getting them to do that.
Keith Smith with us here. They shot 47% from three-point range, so you're going to win a lot of games. I mean, you probably beat the Warriors. You shoot 47% from three-point range. One of the big questions coming into this series was, can Boston score enough to keep up with Philly? If they don't shoot 47% or even somewhere near there, is that going to be a problem for them? I mean, did they just win the game last night because they shot out of their minds? Or can they win in other ways?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, is that they shot so well, and they really defended well too. Philly, 101 points in a game that had a good amount of possessions to it. So, they defended pretty well. They're not going to shoot like that again, probably in the series. It would be a surprise. Right now, the most optimistic Celtics fans are saying, we scored 117 and we didn't even have Jalen Brown. Well, Rozier's probably not going 7 of 9 from 3 again.
Right.
Al Horford shot 10 of 12 overall. That's probably not going to happen again in the series. So they're probably going to see the offense come back to the pack. But the good news is they can even regress a little bit offensively, Philly improve a little bit offensively, and there's still a little bit of margin for error in there to keep it a tight series.
So we asked our listeners on Twitter how they're feeling. 44% little concerned, 34% fine, 14% very concerned, 8% in a panic. How do you think the Sixers fans should feel today?
I think there's maybe a little bit of concern because I think the Celtics found some things that worked game one. But overall, I picked Philadelphia to win in 6. I'm not going to move off that prediction. I think that they've got too many guys who are too good, and some of those guys just didn't show up in game one for very much, especially off the bench. They really struggled with bench production. So they're going to get it back together over these next couple games. And I wouldn't be surprised if they look much, much better in game 2. And then once they get it back home, that's when they really need to step up and perform. So I'd be a little concerned, but not overly so.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. We got people who think that the Sixers losing last night is unacceptable, embarrassing. I mean, would you say losing to that Celtics team on their home court in the second round of the playoffs is unacceptable with all the injuries?
Well, I would counter with, then a heck of a lot of teams would be happy to be embarrassed to lose a second round playoff game on the road to a team that still has really good players. They've if anything, this has proven just how deep Boston is all year. While they're missing a lot of their high end guys, they've still got a lot of really good players behind those guys. So there's no reason to be embarrassed by that loss. You really should never be embarrassed by a road playoff loss unless you go out there and really stink up the joint, lose by 30 or 40, and those are so rare anyway. They just had an off night. It's nothing to, like I said, I wouldn't be overly worried, and I certainly wouldn't be embarrassed.
Look at that, a level-headed man. Keith Smith, Real GM, Celtics blog, Sixers Celtics Thursday night on 97.3 ESPN. Late tip, 8:30. And hopefully we'll talk to Keith a little bit later on in the series. Thank you, Keith.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.